Welcome back. It's Billy Lane from Choppers Inc. and Sons of Speed. I know a lot of you know me from Biker Build-Off. The Biker Build-Off shows were made from, I guess, 2002 to 2006, 2007. But the very first Biker Build-Off, which I was on, aired September 28th, 2002. That was 20 years ago this week. Now, Biker Build-Off was a life-changing event for me. It was probably a life-changing event for a lot of you too. But let me walk you back 20 years and let you know how this whole thing came to be and a lot of things about the show that I know you can't possibly know. Now, Jesse had already done the first Motorcycle Mania, hugely successful. And I saw what it did for his life and what it did for the whole motorcycle industry. It was transformative. And the success of Motorcycle Mania and Monster Garage led to me being on Biker Build-Off. But let me tell you how that happened. I was getting some title work done on one of the custom bikes I'd built, and my phone had rang 3 or 4 times, and it was a phone call from Dave Nichols, who was the editor of Easy Rider magazine at the time. I had done a lot of stuff with Easy Rider. Easy Rider really helped to break my career, along with the Horse magazine. Those 2 magazines believed in me early on and got me a lot of exposure before I was ever on TV. But Dave Nichols calling me 3 or 4 times in an hour means something. When you're a custom bike builder and the editor of Easy Rider magazine calls you, you pick up the phone. Well, I was busy getting a bike titled. So as soon as I got back in my truck, I saw the phone calls that I missed. I returned the phone call to Dave Nichols, and Dave Nichols had a pretty amazing thing to say to me. Dave Nichols said, "Billy, Discovery Channel is going to make Motorcycle Mania 3 with you, and they want to start filming with you right after Daytona Bike Week." And I was kind of blown away. I knew they had already made Motorcycle Mania 1 with Jesse, was a huge success. I knew they were working on Motorcycle Mania 2 with Jesse at that time. And for them to do a 3rd one with me was going to definitely be a big deal and change my life. Hugh King from Original Productions, who produced the Biker Build-Off series, called me and said, "We want to come to your shop and film Motorcycle Mania 3. We scheduled everything, and it was a big deal, you know, in what it would bring for my shop, but also it was a big deal for me. I was still young, and I was still growing my business and still learning how to make money and still learning how to be in the parts business. And we had to shut my business down basically to be able to film. So we shut the whole place down. We start filming. We filmed for, I think, 2 days. And basically we're documenting some of the work I was doing. But Motorcycle Mania 3 was going to document what was happening in my shop leading up to that big spring-summer motorcycle season for us. Well, after about 2 days of shooting, Hugh came in and goes, "Hey, I have some really bad news." You know, what could this be? He said, "We're not going to be able to make Motorcycle Mania 3. There was some kind of issue with the network Discovery. I don't really know what it was. I never really asked, because what we did was we sat down and brainstormed. Okay, you guys are here, I'm here, we're doing this. What do we do?" Hugh and I pulled up a couple old plastic crates, got a few beers, and sat down on the floor of my shop and hammered out the idea for Biker Build-Off. And we just started brainstorming ideas, and we came up with the idea for Biker Build-Off. We talked about who would be good to be on the show. Hugh and I made a long list of people that we thought would be great for the show. And that list of people pretty much was the first half a dozen episodes of Biker Build-Off that you saw. So Original Productions picked Roger Bourget from Arizona to be in the first Biker Build-Off with me, which I was fine with because I knew Roger from the industry, I liked his work, and I knew that what Roger did was so different from what I do, that it'd be a really good contrast for people. And I mean, this was kind of a David and Goliath type situation. I was a really small, young builder, still making my way in the bike industry and in the custom industry. And Roger was pretty established with a huge company and a big crew of people working. I wasn't intimidated. Size never mattered to me in any respect. I was confident in my capabilities, and more important than anything, I knew that doing this would be good for me and my company and good for the whole bike industry in general, because I saw what Motorcycle Mania had done. I didn't care how much bigger Bourget Bike Works was than Choppers Inc. I said, let's go do this. We're going to have a great time. And the most important thing was to make a great show. I didn't really care about anything else. I said, I know if we make a great show, that this is going to be good for everybody, for Roger, for me, for everybody that worked for him, for everybody that worked for me, and for the bike industry as a whole. And you guys know history shows that was true. So to get ready to start doing the Biker Build-Off after we figured out it wasn't going to be Motorcycle Mania 3, there was a lot of work to do. I had to reset my whole schedule for the spring and summer. Laughlin, Nevada, Myrtle Beach, Laconia, New Hampshire, Sturgis. I had bikes to build for customers. I mean, I literally had to rework everything. I had to make a million phone calls. Everybody was cool. Everybody saw the importance of what was going on. And we started getting ready to make this show. I worked in the shop with Nick Fradella. Nick and I worked really, really well together, but I know it wouldn't be enough because they needed to do this bike in a really short period of time. Biker Build-Off was new. Discovery didn't have a huge budget for this, so it meant we had to film it really quickly. And that was kind of what made the show so great. I think the two elements that made the show so great was we had to do it really quickly in an almost impossible amount of time. And then we had to ride these motorcycles a very long distance. And that was what made Motorcycle Mania so great, was in Motorcycle Mania, they rode those motorcycles on a long trip. And that was the same thing about Biker Build-Off. You got done with this bike really quickly, and then you were on the highway. Besides Nick and I had my brother Warren come in from Miami. Warren had got me into Harleys and custom motorcycles. Warren taught me a lot about how to work on them. I mean, he knows, I've told him a million times, I've told anybody who'll listen, you know, how grateful I am to him for getting me into this, because I graduated from engineering school and was supposed to be something else. But motorcycles is my passion. I made a tough choice as a young man, that this is what I was gonna do. I know I made the right choice. I think you know I made the right choice, but I'm grateful to my brother. He was there very early to help me tackle this huge thing I had ahead of me. I went to my chrome shop, Space Coast Plating, who I use to this day, and said, hey, I know you guys take 2 to 3 weeks to chrome stuff. Can I get it done in 3 or 4 days? And they said, yes, Billy. I mean, it was just amazing pulling all these things together. I went to my painter, Joe Richardson. I said, Joe, I'm gonna need you to do a perfect paint job on a bike in 2 days. And Joe looked at me like I was crazy. I called Paul Cox from Indian Larry's shop and said, Paul, I'm gonna need a leather seat made for this bike. Like that, Paul delivered. I mean, there was just, to pull something like this together, that short time frame we did this show in was not fake. That was real. That was one of the things that made Biker Build-Off so great. There was nothing fake. There was nothing scripted. This was very early reality TV. Nobody was telling me what to say. I literally would go in my shop every day and just freeform it, working and doing stuff. And it had a very raw, very real, very genuine feel that I just watched the episode last night and I was like, wow, that's really what happened on that show. So my pre-Biker Build-Off success was built on choppers. I had finished Blue not long before we started doing Biker Build-Off, long stretched out chopper. I'd done a Psychobilly Cadillac hubless bike, which was a long stretched out chopper and really high end. And I knew we had to do the Biker Build-Off bike quick, and I wanted it to be a very simple, very basic bike. So I'm hugely influenced by the art of David Mann, who was in every Easy Rider magazine that I can ever remember. And David Mann's illustrations just showed perfect proportions on every bike he had in there. And so I literally flipped through Easy Rider magazines, looking at David Mann's artwork and saying, I'm gonna build something along those lines. And that's where the lines from Misbehaving come from. If I was just building Misbehaving for myself without a TV camera present, it would have been black. It would have been really plain, very hardcore, all blacked out. But because we were doing it for TV, I knew I had to bring it up a notch because I understood from watching Motorcycle Mania that people wanted to see the stuff that was flashy and really great to look at. And this really presented itself well on camera. So I decided to chrome plate the frame. I decided to go with red paint. Red would be probably the last color I would choose. I would have chose black first and then blue second, but I already just finished a blue bike, and it turns out Roger built the blue bike, so I'm glad I didn't go with blue. I'm glad you chose it, Roger. But that bike would have been black with a black frame, and it would have been hard as hell, but it didn't matter because the lines were so good you could have painted it pink. You watched the episode and watched me riding down the highway on that thing. I mean, to this day, when I look at those videos, I'm just like, gosh, those lines are absolutely perfect. And if you've been watching my Blow videos on my YouTube channel, if you haven't, go back and look at the Blow videos. Blow is a bike I've been wanting to build for a very long time, and Blow has the identical stance to Misbehaving. Same rake, same stretch, exact same springer that Mondo made for me. Really great lines in that bike, and that's the reason I'm doing Blow that way, because Blow is a 20-year flashback to Misbehavin' and David Mann. And to further complicate things with Misbehavin', I decided to have Scott Takis come in and do some airbrush for me. I met Scott out on the road somewhere, and I really recognized his airbrush talent. And I loved the 40s and 50s pinup girls. I had a big pinup girl art book, and I flipped through it and I found a Gil Elfgren girl that I absolutely loved. And I asked Scott, can you airbrush these on the tank? He goes, absolutely. Can you do it in a day? Silence. But you know what? Scott pulled it off, and that artwork on that bike is absolutely stunning. And I mean, I'm so glad that I took that risk. I'm so glad that I took that risk with time and took that risk with Scott, because he was young too, and if you look at his work now, he's very established, but this was very early on for him and for I, and he killed it, and we're friends to this day. I'm forever grateful to make that decision to have him do that work. The paint's done, the chrome's done, the bike has to be put together. This is the hardest part of building a custom motorcycle. I don't care who you are. I've been doing this 35 years. Take my word for it, this is true. Closing a bike, finishing a bike out is the hardest thing to do. You can be the best fabricator in the world, you can be the best engine builder in the world, but if you don't know how to finish a bike out and close it, it's going to be a junker. And I see so many custom bikes that people don't ride because they're not rideable. This is one of my strengths, is when a bike needs to be done, and if you watch that episode, I did most of that closing work on that bike. It's like when a pitcher in baseball pitches 7 innings, great pitcher, but you pull him after 7 innings and put a closer in, because no matter how many good innings that guy pitched, he can't close the game. You got to bring somebody in that can handle the business at the end, and that's what I did with this bike. Something that a lot of people don't know is we'd be filming with the crew for Biker Build-Off, and we worked till 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then we'd all go grab dinner and go get beers or whatever, and they'd say, okay, we'll see you in the morning at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning. We'd all say goodnight, and then I would turn around and go right back to the shop when nobody was in there and work all night long, wiring the bike, doing the oil lines, doing the fuel lines, making little spacers, a lot of the things you didn't see on the show. And I'd go, after working a 14 or 16-hour day, I'd go back and work, sleep on the couch in my shop for an hour, and boom, right back to work with the film crew in the morning. But I got a lot of stuff done when the cameras weren't rolling. It was the only way to get this amount of work done in such a short period of time. So the bike's done, it looks great. I'm wore the F out, my whole crew is wore out, but we know we have a 590-mile ride from Melbourne to Salisbury, North Carolina for the horse smokeout. Long ride, especially on a bike that I rode up and down US 1 in front of my shop for a few minutes. I mean, that was all I test rode it, and it was a huge leap of faith to take this bike on the road going 70, 80, 90 miles an hour on the interstate. It was a huge leap of faith to do it, but I had confidence in the work. We knew we were going to be good, and I knew Roger's bike was going to be good. I knew Roger had a big, talented crew. Roger's a talented guy. I knew Roger had a big, talented crew, and I knew they were going to be prepared. And I didn't have the resources that he had, so I was an underdog in that respect. I knew he had the upper hand on me when it came to quality and the ability to get things done and resources. Yes, I was a few hours late like I always am, but we got on the road. When we got to Daytona and I saw Roger's bike for the first time, I knew it was really good. It wasn't what I expected. I mean, I knew his style would be way different than mine, and I liked it. I knew it was really, really well done. I was proud of Roger because he put himself in his shop through the same thing I just put myself on my crew through. So I was really proud of him for being there. It felt like a huge moment to be standing there with him. All the shop work was behind us. This is the first time I did this. Now, you know, I'd experienced this quite a few times after this, but this is the first Biker Build-Off. So this was a new feeling for me to know that all that work was done. I just rode 90 miles from my shop in Melbourne to Daytona, and now here Roger and I and our crews are going to go another 500 miles to North Carolina. We get on the highway, 2 guys in our crews with 2 bikes that we had just finished on a high-speed run from Florida to North Carolina, trying to do it in one day. Get on the highway. We went on the highway long, and I mean, we saw clouds and skies as black as you can get. And I've been to Florida all my life, and let me tell you, when a Florida thunderstorm comes in, That's a lot of rain. I mean, there was miles and miles and miles of rain, and you could see that footage. I mean, we were doing it, Springer front end, no front fender. Roger's crew was so solid to ride with. Those guys were fun. Roger was fun. The crew of guys he brought with him were fun. I mean, we had such a blast doing this. Every time we had to pull over for something, everybody was helping everybody else out. It was just really, really a great time. Let me tell you a little something about this episode and about these biker build-offs that you don't know. So this is early 2000s. The original production's crew was using mini DV cameras that recorded to tape. It's different than the cameras now that don't record to tape. They're much bigger and heavier. And they would shoot all this riding footage with us in a minivan that had a sliding door that opened on either side of the minivan. The cameraman, Jesse Finney, would hang out the side of the minivan with that camera just a few inches off the ground shooting all that footage. A lot of it's low angle shots, and he shot that hanging out the side of a minivan. And they had a motorcycle strap or a seatbelt around him, holding him so he wouldn't fall out of the vehicle. But he was sitting there, and then Hugh King was sitting right next to him in the seat, telling them, get this angle, get that angle, and they were shooting with a camera, and he used a lipstick camera on a boom. And this is before drones, so any of the aerial footage that you see was shot with real helicopters. In the opening footage of the show, Roger and I were at this old abandoned airstrip in the rain riding a bike, and there's a helicopter riding 20 feet in front of us with all the rotor wash blowing on us. I mean, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I remember us riding. I mean, it was like we were gonna hit this helicopter. It was so close to us. Helicopters flying sideways in front of us with a cameraman hanging out the side of it shooting the footage. I mean, it was surreal. For a guy like me to have come from nowhere, to have all this happening around me, knowing that this is a big investment, that they hired a helicopter pilot and they secured this airstrip, and here we are shooting and stuff. I mean, as it was happening, I kept telling myself, this can't be real. You're gonna wake up and this is gonna be some crazy dream you had. But it was real. Jesse Finney and that original productions crew got some stunning footage on this first biker build-off. They put a lot of hard work into it. I mean, you watch it, you can see. I mean, it's art on the screen. Those bikes, Roger's bike looked so amazing going down the road. Riding in the rain, riding at night with the headlights on. This didn't happen to guys like us. If you look at the last few frames of the biker build-off episode, you can see in the corner of the screen, Hugh King's hand is waving me to come closer to the minivan, closer to the camera so they can get a better shot of me. And that's kind of a cool thing that I just noticed watching it last night, that they didn't crop that out of the screen when they were shooting it. That's, you can see how close we were to that minivan. I mean, sometimes they would come over to our lane and we'd come over to their lane, and we'd be 6 inches apart going 80 miles an hour down the road in the rain on the highway. Let's talk about the pothole. This is what everybody remembers about this episode. That pothole was as big around as the front wheel on this bike, and it was probably about a foot deep, and I didn't see it. I was looking, but I didn't see it. We were going about 80 miles an hour on the interstate. We had just rolled into North Carolina. I didn't see that thing, and I hit it, and when I hit it, I mean, it bucked. My front end went down into the pothole and almost endoed the motorcycle, driving the rear wheel forward and up off the ground, and that thing bucked me off the seat about a foot. If you've ever ridden an old Springer like that, they do not dampen themselves. Well, the Springer started wobbling real quick and the bike started shaking real bad, and I mean, I couldn't hit the brakes because my foot had come off the foot pegs. I just was holding on for life thinking, man, if I go down, I'm gonna get run over by 5 other motorcycles. And I'm going really fast. And I'm wearing a t-shirt. But, and look at Roger's face. He looks over at the camera as I hit that pothole, like, can you believe what just happened? And it took me a second to recover. I look back at Roger laughing, just thinking to myself, man, I'm still here. So we pulled over, it bent my front rim. The front rim was shaking so bad it was hard to ride. Bent the Springer, the bike wouldn't ride straight anymore. Tried to tweak it as best I could. We pulled over, we checked everything out. We still had some miles to go. We decided, hey, let's get back on the highway and finish this thing out. I knew rolling into the horse smokeout in Salisbury, North Carolina, that Roger was at a huge disadvantage coming to this event for the judging, because I've been writing magazine articles for the Horse magazine for a few years now, and that was their event. And so I kind of had a built-in following from the people that attend the smokeout. So I knew he was at a huge disadvantage, and it really wasn't fair to him. But I also knew that the judging really didn't matter. Like I said earlier, if we made a great show, that was what really mattered. And we did make a great show. You know, you don't win any money for doing Biker Build-Off. They didn't pay us any money at all for doing Biker Build-Off. So there was nothing except for the trophy they gave you, and who cares about the trophy? I mean, I'd won so many really important trophies prior to this that it really wasn't that big of a deal to me. The real reward for me was building a great bike, sharing it with all of you, getting to ride with somebody like Roger and his crew and my friends, and getting to be a part of something like this. I knew before it ever was edited and aired on TV that this was going to be super important, and that to me was the real payoff. So I never really cared about the judging on this show or any of them and what happened at the end. I knew that if you made a great show and there was something memorable about that show, that was the success, that was the real payoff. And there was a lot of memorable things in this episode, but the one that everybody talks about was the pothole. And boom, who went through it? Me. So it's been 20 years, right? We're still here. I'm still here doing the same thing. I've still got blue all these years later, but thank you for being here with me 20 years later. This was a life-changing event, like I said at the beginning. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment. I'm gonna respond to them. Biker Build-Off #1 was probably the single most important event to happen to me in my motorcycle career. I am highly grateful that I was able to be a part of it.